The title is kind of challenging. I'd say actually I could finish this talk by saying, well, let's wait a bit for the evidence before I start spouting on about it, and especially since I can see that I was meant to finish it at 5 past, so maybe this will help me to get to the end quicker. So rather than answer the question directly, I thought I'd talk about 3 things. The first is the evidence that's out there about what's actually going on at some macroscopic level, at the global level. Then how the EU is responding through the Climate-KIC, what it's contributing, if you like. And then the last bit is the evidence that I've got. So you'll have to wait till the end for the evidence, and if you're really hungry, you might, well, we'll see how interested you are in the question. Actually, if you start walking out, I'll know. So Fionn kind of stole my thunder. There's been a number of studies, one done for the German government. The Calderon Commission, the New Carbon Economy, produced some figures, and I heard something about 5 trillion. It really, in a way, doesn't matter. Somewhere between 2 and now 5 trillion per annum is the dollars is the size of this climate innovation economy. I think the reason there's such a spread in the values is actually because people are not very definitive about what this area is. And indeed, it's rather difficult to measure because, as John pointed out, it's not a sector of its own. It resides in supermarkets, it resides in factories, it resides in our homes, it resides in cities. So this activity is going on all over the place, because all over the place is where the problem is. So it's rather difficult to account for. Notwithstanding all of that, all the estimates tell you this is a huge amount of economic activity. I think actually the more interesting thing is not only is it a huge amount of economic activity, it's also the only area of economic activity that since 2008 has been growing, and it's been growing on average at a level of something like 11% per annum. Again, that's also a little bit, I'm not quite sure exactly where it is. The point is that it's growing and it's in double digits. I know more about the UK, obviously, so I haven't looked at the figures for Ireland. But if you look at the UK, there was actually net exports from our area worth £5 billion last year. The total size of the market was 128 billion, and it created about 37,000 jobs in the last 4 years, new jobs. I always find this amazing. You listen to all that and you say, well, I mean, that should be in the newspapers, right? It should be rather interesting public information, because here's a bit of the economy that's growing. It's what's helping us get out of a recession. And in fact, what you'll find is that the press is remarkably silent. The government actually published, the UK government published this data in their Queen's speech as an annex. It's all there if you care to look, but nobody cares to look and nobody cares to say anything about it. Nevertheless, it is very well understood, although not spoken about very loudly, that if you aren't part of this, you're not going to have an economic future. So despite my government's kind of shyness, shall we say, about talking about what's going on, if you get them in a room and you're talking to them about what you're doing, they're very interested in what it is you can do to help the UK economy to grow. Now, I don't believe that will be any different for any other advanced economy, and it won't be any different for Ireland. In other words, the first question that I've been given is evidence that climate innovation works. I'd say, one, I bloody well hope so, because if it doesn't, we've got some deep problems. And if you're not working in the area, you're not working to create economic growth in this area, you're going to be missing the boat. So I don't see this as it would be nice to do this kind of issue. It's from 2 imperatives. You should be doing this. You must do this. You must do it because society needs it, if society is to survive, and you must do it if you value the well-being of your economy. Right, so that's the sort of the macro viewpoint. European Union's response, I have to say, it wasn't just a response about climate change. It was a general response about the European Union's ability to do innovation. If you look at these wonderful sort of lists of where's the top innovation nation in the world and where does Europe sit, Europe has been gently sinking down the list. And that from a high point, of course. The 19th century and the early 20th century, Europe was a leader, and we're now, I can't remember where it is, 9th position in the world or whatever. So they set up a thing called the European Institute for Innovation and Technology that was going to create these KICs, these knowledge innovation communities, and they were going to be spurs to economic growth through innovation. So currently there are 3. There's an ICT one, there's an energy one, and there's us, the climate one. I'm one of the multiple co-founders of the Climate-KIC, and we decided to do that one because we thought the other 2 were kind of obvious and easy. And climate change innovation is non-obvious and difficult, and therefore is the area that you should concentrate on and that matters the most. It's the biggest challenge, in my opinion, that society faces for this century. So if you're going to do something useful with the rest of your career, you should focus on this. So that's what we decided to do. So we've got to do a simple thing, apparently, which is to help to grow Europe's green economy. That's our role. I think it was us who coined the name climate innovation. We used it in our bid. I'm glad to see somebody else defining it. I don't know whether anybody else was using it before us. The use of the word climate innovation was deliberate. It was trying to express a thing which was clean tech had got itself stuck into a niche. It had got a bit of a bad reputation amongst investors. That niche was renewable energy. And as you've seen in multiple times, climate innovation is meant to be more than that. It's meant to be about mitigation and adaptation. And so in the mitigation end, of course, there's renewables in there. But it's also about energy efficiency. It's about material efficiency. It's about systems innovation to that end. And it's about carbon negativity. And then there's the adaptation part, which is completely missing from clean tech. So all of these things are basically, they're aimed at addressing the challenges and the opportunities of climate change and looking for the spaces where there's something useful to do. So I thought actually I would take the opportunity of trying to tell you where I think those spaces lie. And I think there are 2 ways of addressing this. There are short-term opportunities, challenges that can be laid down by business. Generally, they tend to be in terms of reducing their energy consumption, making them more energy efficient. For some sectors, it's also to do with securing value chains. In other words, there's some sort of adaptation type of question or resilience question in behind what they're talking about. So those are short-term type questions. The other questions are longer term, and they tend to not be with business. Business horizons and perspectives are relatively short term. The longer term questions are all in the IPCC reports and other bodies like EASA and the IEA who've tried to address these challenges in some macro way. And if you look at what they say, you'll find that there are inherently challenges within that, and they've sort of been mentioned around the place. We've got money from 2 places for the KIC. We've got a maximum of 25% from the public purse, from you good taxpayers, and myself, I guess, as well, since I pay tax. And actually, in our case, way over 75% of funding from private sources, from the partners of the Climate-KIC. And there are over 250 partners now, so we accumulate quite a lot of resource. It's about of the order of 400 million to 500 million euros per annum at the moment. of which this year 75 million comes from the taxpayer, comes from the EU. The taxpayers' money to me is very special because it's actually, that money is being spent in the public interest. That's the money that we can use to address some of these longer term issues. Where I expect my business partners to be contributing more is in the shorter term issues that address their challenges. Everything that we do in the Climate-KIC is to do with challenges that are either set then by the long term perspective, IPCC, or the shorter term perspectives, companies, and in between there's something to do with cities and sort of clusterings of our infrastructure. If I were to identify the really big things, I can go on about, I will talk about the companies in a bit. If I go for the longer term things, I think you need to look for the white spaces. So don't just look at your own hinterland and say, well, we're pretty good at agriculture, so we should do something there. I think that's a good reason for doing it, but there are white spaces where there's virtually no activity going on. Carbon negative technologies. I don't want to sound all doomy and gloomy, but it's my assessment that we will not hit the 2-degree target unless we have carbon negative technologies. That's what the IPCC believes as well. So if you're going to go and get public money, you should be doing the hard bits. So carbon negative technologies is my number one first thing that I think you should do. The other thing is climate change is already happening. The effects of it are seen in extreme weather events. It's amazing how when we talk about adaptation, we tend to talk about big civil engineering projects, things that the government will fund. Actually, the impact on us personally, if we happen to be in a flood zone, is pretty traumatic, and there's virtually no technologies other than sandbags for floods and the like to prevent that trauma from being pretty horrendous. So I'd say adaptation technologies and approaches that are personal, that are at the level of me and you, or at the level of a business or a building like this. It's a vacuum. I can't see anything in that space at all. The third one is energy storage, which has been mentioned already. And there you can look at, you can even, if you're wanting to create a business based on high density energy storage, which is I suggest where you want to be, you'll see the figures that you need to achieve. It's something less than $150 per kilowatt hour. Just look at the McKinsey work. If you can create a high density energy storage device that will store a kilowatt hour at that kind of value, you've got a business. There is stuff going on in that area, but not enough. I don't know where that innovation is going to come from. There's no reason why it shouldn't come from here at all. And it's vital, it's necessary. Okay, so, and that was me kind of going on a little bit about the bigger scene. Maybe I should say something about the way that the KIC works as a model, and then I'll talk about what evidence I've got that it might work. So the KIC, as I said, it's got 250 partners. In a way, big deal. Maybe that's too many partners. Maybe it wasn't very clever of us. The clever thing is getting the right actors together. And the clever thing is getting them to talk to each other, and that's hard. There's been a lot of words very early on about innovation isn't just about technology, and that's absolutely right. It's a thing you should hold on to. Superb example. Who was it, Euphion, that was talking about the smart energy system? You were in a smart building, right? Smart building full of dumb people. That's the way that a control engineer would put it. Actually, the control engineer is wrong. The control systems need to be compatible with the way that people work and the way that people live. Earlier in the morning, there was something about, I'm going to paraphrase, the technology needs to be sexy. It needs to be desirable. Why should everything to do with climate change, innovation, be hair shirts and caves? It's not. It should be good fun. It should be something that you want to use, and it should work with you. It should do stuff for you in a way that's accessible. Those things are to do with design, that to do with interaction with people. So we've got a part of our program which is just to do with that. So don't just look at the technology, look at the thing to do with people. Bring real people in to look at your innovation. Don't assume that because you make it and it's really good and it performs really well and an engineer has told you so, that it's worth diddly. It's not worth diddly unless people will buy it and use it. And you won't be having a climate impact unless they do. So take that really seriously. Remember the industry. In the end, somebody's going to have to deliver at scale. So you can create things, but you've got to have partners who can scale. More than half of our partners are from business, a mixture of big businesses, multinationals, and SMEs. Bring them together because together they can do new things. Bigger businesses find it difficult to innovate. Smaller businesses with support can be really good sources of innovation for them. If you can bring them together in ways that really attack some market and will scale, you've done a good job. If you can do that once, that's brilliant. If you've done it twice, that's fantastic. Politics and policy are invariably a part of this, so bring them in. So the Department of Energy and Climate Change are a partner of my part of the KIC. And the last thing is the thing which tends to be the headline I saw in most of the things, and I think they're very important, but they're just 1/4 of the solution, if you like, and that's knowledge institutes, universities and research institutes. They're really important, but they are important in the service of what innovation you're going to create. They're not there to do research. They should be doing that anyway, and that research should be in the service of what you're going to innovate. If you can bring those 4 types of actors together, and you can get them to work together well, then you can support an innovation pipeline that will make a difference. And it's hard, but it's really worthwhile doing. So I've got about 3 minutes left. Well, 5, 3. So what evidence have I got that we're doing things? Well, our pipeline is rather interesting. It includes 3 different things, broadly speaking. One of them is actually education and training. I believe our lasting legacy will be people who understand how to do innovation in the particular context of climate, where systems innovation is really important. You have to understand what your innovation will do in a system. You have to be able to work in systems. If you can get people who are really good, that's great. So we've trained about 1,500, slightly less actually, students of one form or another, from postgraduate level up to people as old as me, or maybe even older actually. Anybody who's interested in making a difference. Out of those, 10% have gone into policy, about 25% have created their own businesses, some of which we've been supporting, and the rest of whom are doing innovation within companies. The remarkable thing is that they've all remained within the climate change arena. And that's one of the big advantages you've got. This is such a big problem, and you have no idea how many people want to do something about it. So give them the stage and give them the facilities to make a difference, and they will come. So to answer your question, yeah, I think I've got about 250 odd people out there actually making businesses, and I've got about 850 out there working within businesses trying to make a difference. And I've got 100 and whatever it is doing something in the policy arena. Then we've got a bit of the pipeline, which is, if you like, the corporate pipeline. It's our partners working together, delivering stuff. And I'll return to that to show you a little business and a big business. There's many examples. I'm going to give you one working together. The third part is the bit that I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, and that's the startup accelerator. At the heart of anything that's going to have a buzz, anything that's really going to make a difference, you need a startup ecosystem that's really well supported. Those 4 actors I talked about can supply challenges, know-how, facility, expertise, and reputation to the very best startups. So if you're very careful about the startups that you choose, you can really, really turbocharge them. We've been going 2.5 years. We've got 50 of them in our accelerator. 20 of them have graduated. They've got to the stage where they should be investable. 6 have dropped out. The rest of them are all inside the pipe, so I can't tell you yet what's going to happen. Of the 20 graduates that we've got, they've raised 33 million euros. So all of them have got more than $250,000 raised. Some of them have been very recent, so I don't expect them to have huge amounts. The one who's raised the most has got 8 million, 3 million. Most of them have got more than 1.5 million. That means, one, it is possible to create these businesses. They also create jobs, so 106 jobs have been created. They can get investment, self-evidently. There is money out there. People can't invest money at the moment and get a good return. So there's money which is willing to take some risks and go to early stage innovation. I don't know what the scenery is like in Ireland, but you're incredibly well connected to the US. You're only a hop and a skip away from London, where there's a huge risk capital finance sector. It shouldn't be difficult for you guys to get hold of this. You've got great innovation instincts and great entrepreneurial instincts as well. You should be able to lead in pretty similar way, I hope, to the way that the Anglo-Saxons on the other side of the Irish Sea have been doing. So I think there is evidence that we can do stuff. The thing I can't tell you yet is how much mitigation and adaptation we've created. That will take a bit longer, and I'd like to finish off by giving you the example of bringing a big company and a small company together. So one of our best startups uses nanomaterials to encapsulate molecules. And it does it such a way that you can deliver those molecules at a known dose at a known time, and you need less of the material to do it. When you do your washing, you put in a lot of excess enzymes, a lot of excess detergent, because most of it just gets flushed down and then has to be cleaned up, and that uses huge amounts of energy. By encapsulating it, you can use a lot less. It reduces the energy cost for that wastewater by 80%. The technology is wonderful, comes out of Cambridge University. We got them into contact with Novozymes, who are a partner in Denmark of ours. Big multinational, probably the main enzyme producer, and you probably use it in your own washing at this very moment. We spent a day trying to get them to talk and to understand each other. They're now in partnership. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does, I've got a little company working with one of the world's majors, and that means that technology will get scaled, and the impact, both financially, economically, and more importantly, from my perspective, climate change-wise, will scale. Anyway, that's a really brief discussion, and I'll be able to talk later on as well. So I'm going to shut up now. Bye-bye, everybody.